Hey guys, so this isn't really a regular kind of video. Basically, I wrote this script about an hour or so after Manfred's news came out saying that there's less than, well, he's basically said there isn't 100% chance that the league will come back for this season. So I kind of thought that I would put out my thoughts on it. Usually, when I write a script, I write it more or less word for word. This isn't going to be like that. I made like a structured outline of what I want to say, but not really anything concrete that I want to say. So, in an interview with ESPN, Rob Manfred basically said that he is not confident that there will be a 2020 baseball season, officially saying that he's not 100% certain that it's going to happen. This was a couple hours ago, and around the same time, the league had sent a letter to the players' union basically saying that there would be no 2020 season unless the players waived any legal claims against the league. This basically goes back to an agreement between the union and the MLB from around mid March, late March, from when the lockdown in the United States started. Basically, in that agreement, Manfred is able to impose a 50 game season, like around that area. But the union said that if Manfred does end up doing that after all of these negotiations, that they'll file a grievance against the league, basically saying that the owners didn't negotiate in good faith and they're going to try to sue the league, essentially. Now, the league is saying that there will be no season unless the players waive any legal claims against the league, basically saying that they can't do this grievance, in a sense. They can't send this grievance. And this is of a couple hours ago. I don't know what it's going to look like when I upload this. I'm assuming Tuesday morning is when I'm going to upload this. Now I kind of want to look at what has led to this situation. Basically, in my opinion, the past, let's say, 7 to 8 months have done more harm to the sport of baseball than probably any other point in history. This includes the 1994 strike, the steroid scandal, and whatever else I'm missing. What has happened in the past less than a year essentially has done more harm to this league, and it's pretty insane when you actually look at the timeline of events. I guess it really starts off in around, I think it was around November, when the Astros were accused of sign stealing. And then a little while later, the Red Sox were accused of the same thing. And actually, recently, the Yankees were, I guess, somewhat accused of doing the same thing. I don't really understand the situation. The fact that three separate franchises have been accused and two of them convicted to try to win the top championship in the sport. It's just insane at this point to think about it, especially that these three franchises are three of the best franchises within the past 5 seasons. Two of them all time, Red Sox and Yankees, obviously. The Astros have built, I guess you can call it a dynasty to an extent. It's kind of crazy when you realize that in pretty much any other professional sports league in the US, a scandal may appear, or a scandal of this kind of level may appear once or twice a decade, maybe a little more, but it doesn't happen too often. And then in the MLB, you see three of the best teams being accused of cheating in less than a year. How do you think that makes baseball look? To fans not really paying attention to the sport other than maybe the playoffs, or maybe they'll read a headline every now and again. What do you think they think? Are they really going to actually want to watch the sport knowing that some of these teams may be cheating to win? Sure, some other sports or leagues may be doing the same thing and we just haven't caught them, but that's just speculation. At least two teams have been convicted of it. It's just insane that now baseball has an even bigger stain on its reputation than it had less than a year ago. So to kind of continue the timeline, I just kind of want to read off what has happened since around March or so. So around mid-March, when the pandemic started to become a reality, that's when the MLB postponed their season, or at least they postponed their spring training to a later date. And on March 27th, the league and the players union actually finalized a deal with the potential framework for the 2020 season. essentially guaranteeing that the players will receive a full prorated service time, meaning that they will get paid to the amount of games that will be played. Is I probably could have explained that better, but you might have a better understanding than me. And there's actually an interesting paragraph from looks like SI.com. Let me find the author. Michael McCann, his article on the 5 keys to MLB's crucial deal with Players Association. The 5th key point just makes me laugh at this point. Let me just read it. The deal extinguishes the risk of an unpopular legal fight between owners and players over how to divide money. Many are old enough to remember the 1994 to 95 MLB strike. It took years and a steroids-inflated home run chase for MLB to regain fans who lost interest in a sport that seemed driven by the greed of all involved. Now it's been less than 2 months, and a lot has changed since this paragraph was written. Around the end of March, MLB announced that they would be giving minor league players a weekly payment of $400 for each player through the end of May, or until the start of the minor league season, whichever comes first. And then you kind of think about, well, is $400 really enough for these minor league players? We've known for a long time that minor league players in general are underpaid. And then you also tie in the fact that Manfred was looking to downsize their minor leagues by getting rid of however many teams. I can't think of the top of my head, but it was at least a few dozen. And then you kind of continue down the timeline with the MLB thinking about an Arizona plan where everyone centered in Arizona somehow, and everyone's able to play through the season. Then you get to around the end of May where the MLB has finally made an offer to the players, and it pretty much contradicts what they agreed upon about 2 months prior. The main issue with this offer was instead of full prorated salaries, there would have been some sort of scale where, depending on how much you were originally slated to earn, you would only get a certain percentage. And then a few days later, you have the player union offering their own offer, full prorated compensation per game played, and 114 regular season games with expanded playoffs. And also a couple of ideas which were interesting, with the players wearing microphones on the field to enhance the broadcast, which I think would be pretty fun. Then around the second week of June, the MLB had their own offer, shortening the amount of games they originally offered from 82 to 76. Then instead of a laid out scale like before, the players would have received 75% of their prorated salaries, contingent on the playoffs actually being completed. Again, this contradicts what they originally agreed upon 2 months prior, saying that they would get full prorated salaries. Although, to be fair, there were a couple of things that weren't terrible about the offer, with players being able to opt out of the 2020 season and be able to retain their salaries and service time. Then also there was a section where for free agents that were tagged with qualifying offers, the teams losing the free agents would still get their draft pick, but the team that would sign that player would not have to give up their draft pick, which was interesting. Definitely an interesting proposition to have in there. Then, like the next day, the Players Union put their counter proposal: 89 regular season games, postseason, expanded postseason actually, full prorated salaries, basically pretty similar to what the Players Union first offer was. So at least you can see the games are getting closer. And then you have the league's most recent offer: 72 regular season games, an expanded postseason, maxing out to 80% of full prorated salaries, including an extra $50 million that would go to playoff teams and bring the overall percentage to 83%. However, when you really look at the offers, the league is not really negotiating in good faith, in my opinion. As Trevor Bauer pointed out, 70% of prorated salaries at 72 games is the exact same as full prorated at 48 games, which the league seems to be hinting to want to do. They want to do less games to alleviate the risk. But it's not just the risk of players getting infected that they're trying to alleviate, it's the risk of losing money. So really, with these negotiations, what they're saying is that if the players want to play more games, there's just going to be a risk of them not being fully paid in the end. One of the examples being that in the second offer, if I remember correctly, the league said that the players would receive 75% of their prorated salaries contingent on the playoffs being completed. So basically, they would receive that full 75% if the playoffs would be completed, which would be sometime in October. And by then, who knows what the world is going to look like. Maybe the league won't be able to be finished. And when you look at it like that, you see that the owners just want to try and keep as much money as possible, with the players being the ones to have to suffer the most. So that's really the timeline, if I understand it correctly. I might be misinterpreting some things, but the way I see it, I'm assuming a lot of people are going to agree with me. This isn't some new revelation I just came up with, but the owners are just being completely greedy. And it's just so frustrating to watch as a fan. Like, I just want this league to succeed. I want this league to come back. I want to see old fans of baseball to come back, to see children actually being invested in the league so it can keep growing like the NBA. Like, when you think about it, baseball had the opportunity to be the first major sports league in the US to come back and be televised to millions of people who are stuck at home. Remember when the possible relaunch date was July 4th? Now the NBA has a relaunch date. The NHL, I'm pretty certain, has one, or at least they're in a much better spot than MLB. And of course, some players in the NBA are not entirely comfortable with the league coming back, but in the end, there is a plan in place, unlike the MLB. Then you look at other countries, with the English Premier League coming back. The Bundesliga is back. La Liga, I'm pretty certain, is coming back soon. And that's just some of them. And I get it, those are other countries, but seeing all of those sports come back with MLB being left in the dust, it's just sad. And as a fan, you just have to watch and go along for the ride, even though it's a ride you don't want to be on. I guess we expected to be on this ride at some point with the 2021 potential strike coming, but this has just made it so much worse, especially if there is no season. And it really makes me wonder how many careers are forever altered by this. Like, obviously, everyone's career is going to be altered in some way because of the pandemic. Like, that's just a given. But how many players will be considered wasted potential because of this? Not necessarily because of the pandemic itself, but because of a lost season and the potential of a lockout after December 1st, 2021, when the current CBA runs out. And really, at this point, I shouldn't say the potential of a lockout because it's definitely going to happen. If there was any doubts before this mess, it's basically a certainty now. And it might come even earlier with, if there's no season, what if we have like a 1 to 2 year lockout? Like, that's definitely not off the table. I remember making the 2020 full off-season timeline video a couple of months ago, and I said something along the lines of, watch something super crazy come out after the release of this video. Obviously, a quarantine happened a few weeks later, but who would have thought that we would be potentially entering a shutdown of the league before the 2021 season had ended, or even just before the 2020 season had begun? There might be something I forgot to talk about, but I think everything I wanted to talk about is here. Thanks for listening to my ramblings. Hopefully this doesn't have to become a common thing, but I guess time will tell. I don't know how long this video is going to be, and if you listen to the whole thing, I want to know your opinion on this, because I'm assuming the opinions are going to be similar, but I really want to see everyone's thoughts on this whole situation. I should have a normal upload sometime this weekend, but until then, thanks for listening. See you later.